Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another one of our videos. I'm joined by some great people. We may have a couple more pop in a little bit. But today we're going to talk about USB host. And we've talked about it before, but there's all sorts of new stuff to talk about when it comes to USB host. And a lot of it is really kind of cool. I'm joined with, maybe this way, sure. I'm joined by Dan Halbert from Adafruit. Thank you, Dan. James Kissel, I'm not sure how to say your last name. Will be a user of our mouse filter, the Tremor filter. Ron Nelson, who has taken on the job of commercializing these for us, hopefully successfully. Jackson Fugate from Riptide, was from Riptide, now a proud Florida Gator. Go Gators. And but we'll talk about his role in this. And Alyssa Wern, without whom most of this would not have happened. Right? Really, if you look back on it, none of this happens without Alyssa. She's an occupational therapist from Gainesville, Florida, and she just helped us at AOTA, so we've been together recently. But long-term friend of ours and gadfly to prodding AbleNet to open source the drivers for IntelliKeys. So I'm gonna talk about why we're having this chat today, and then I might go through a little bit of history, and I want to show a couple demos because some interesting stuff has happened. I need to silence my phone. I'm sorry. Jefferson says he's here. I think he means he's watching. And Chris Young says, "Is everything okay? I'm waiting for your event." Well, those are two bad notes. So let's make sure.
That's what you get for starting late. Maybe it was just you started.
I didn't start late. Let me do this on Facebook and see if we're live. If we're not live, we're live. We're live on Facebook. I think they just piped up in that minute that we made them wait. All right. David from also a friend of mine from Adafruit, doesn't work at Adafruit, but he's from their boards, is here. Jefferson Bickerstaff is here watching. He says, "Hi, I'm here." And Chris must really mean that Ron says, "All I can see is black and Alyssa's video, but that might be me." Ron, that's you. Why don't you leave and jump back in?
It always happens to me with StreamYard.
Are you on Linux or something crazy like that?
No, Windows 10. All
right. Well, jump out and jump back in, and we'll get started for real. So, Jefferson, you can text in the comments on Facebook. I want to show one of your videos. I hope you don't mind. And thank you for those of you who piped up and said that there was an issue. So let me get started first here and explain why we're chatting today. So we're really chatting because Adafruit came out with a board that looks like this one right here. And this is a USB host feather that kind of is everything we ever wanted. And there's a reason it's everything we ever wanted. It's because I pestered Lamore Freed until she made exactly what we need. It turns out it is good for a lot of other things as well, as Dan will attest. But it is huge that they went through and made a device that is this perfect for our application. And it is not lucky. It is very much because we've been explicit with what we need, and they are very responsive and they listen very well. So let me add Ron back in here. Ron, hopefully you can see better. Any better?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. Well, why don't you bring up?
I'll just pretend.
No, bring up the Facebook stream.
Yeah, I've had to do that before. The problem is that they're slightly out of sync.
So. Yeah, so mute that one and listen to this one.
Okay.
All right, you can deal with it. We're all professionals and geeks here. We can manage, okay? All right, so this device by Adafruit really changes the landscape for what we can do and what we have to do on at AT Makers. It really does. A huge percentage of the things that we make really are about converting one form of USB into another. So it's from converting things like a gamepad that's not like a custom joystick into a Xbox controller, or it is about taking a mouse and trying to remove the tremors, or it's about making the IntelliKeys. There are a ton of things that we do that really are about filtering HID inputs, mouse and keyboard inputs, as they go through the system. And this device just does it. It is the kind of the final evolution of a lot of things we've done over the past few years, and I kind of want to go through this if you guys don't mind. But I want to start by sharing a video which Lamore Freed shared. I don't know, a few days ago, and I want to make sure I can. I got to share it with audio so you can hear her. Sorry, I'm an amateur at this too. Yeah, this one. I want to include the system audio. And yep, I know I got it. All right, so this is the video I want to start with here. And this is Lamore. She's our friend from Adafruit. She's Dan's boss. And
early data, what is this?
This is an IntelliKeys assistive device, which has a matrix of touch switches behind it, and then these swappable overlays, and each overlay is like a little bit different. So you see this one has like mouse and keyboard, QWERTY keyboard, and this has like a bigger kind of alphanumeric keyboard, and it uses a photocell to determine which overlay you have installed. And this is a really useful device, but unfortunately it's no longer supported, and the driver downloads firmware over USB from the computer, like a Windows computer. And so if you're not running like Windows, and maybe it runs on Windows 10, but other devices like Chromebooks or tablets with mobile can't use this because they don't have that driver firmware to download into this device. But what we can do is use one of our USB host feathers, and what this does is HID translation. So this chip enumerates the IntelliKeys through the USB connection, downloads the firmware, and then asks it what overlay it's got, and TAC did an amazing job reverse engineering the original driver. And then to connect it to something like an iPad, you would connect using what's called like a camera kit. And here I've got like the Notes app up. And then you just give it a second because it needs to download that firmware. It'll beep when it's ready. And then you can type on this, and it shows up just like keyboard input. So, hello.
all right, so I think we don't need to watch the end of that, but I think you guys get the point here. And a lot of you are probably like, well, wait, we can already do that. But not really. Not really. There are a lot of huge things in that are worth talking about, right? So the first is pretty obvious. That's a commercial product, right? So this filter that they're selling is $17, and nobody had to solder it, and nobody had to do anything to custom manufacture it, right? Second thing is they also redid all of our code, and I'm totally good with that. I'm completely fine with that, right? So our code was cobbled together from the original, and I have this timeline we'll probably talk about in a little bit. It was the original code from AbleNet, well, from IntelliTools, which AbleNet finally was badgered into open sourcing by Alyssa. And that was taken by GD Sports, a person or group of people in GitHub who, when I asked for their pronouns, said, just call me GD Sports. So I have literally no idea who this person is or who these people are, but we'll just say they took it and turned it into an Arduino library, which we then took and put into, used as the input. Let me show you guys this. So this is the first this is the first ever IntelliKeys adapter, right? So this is the one I made. on a Adafruit board with two Adafruit boards on it, right? 4 wires connecting underneath, and it took in the IntelliKeys from this side, right, and sent out regular on the outside. So this was running GD Sports code, and this was running Circuit Python. And the reason we made it Circuit Python was it let us prototype easily. It did a lot of things really, really well, but it didn't fit in the Trinket M0. We didn't have enough room to put all the overlays in it. We constantly had crashes. And you'll notice that this is a 2-chip solution, meaning that if this thing started up in the wrong order because this guy started up faster for some reason, this one had to be reset, right? And this is not a good solution. We've known forever that this is a kind of crap way to solve a really big problem, right? So we went from this to one of these, which is this is really where Riptide got involved, right? So Jackson, you have fond memories of this because you made a ton of them, right? So Roaring Riptide, the robotics team in Gainesville, made, I don't know, 100. I don't know how many. How many do you think you made of these?
A lot. I don't have the metric, but I know it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've gotten at least 100 requests. We've probably fulfilled dozens, at least. I mean, probably 80 of those. I'm sure, Alyssa, you probably have those numbers somewhere. But these are requests that came into the charity because somebody used IntelliKeys and could not communicate without it. And I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that I think is missing from the discussion about the IntelliKeys. And I think this isn't intentional at all, but it's something that is kind of missing when you watch Lamore's video or the video she did right after TAC released it, or when we talk about it on the technical side. Everybody says, this is a device that's really great, but it's not supported anymore. We're so happy to be able to support it. They don't talk about why is this one so critical, right? And I'm glad Jefferson Bickerstaff is in the chat. I'm going to probably, anything he types, I'll be happy to add. But I mean, I have a story about this. But Alyssa, do you want to go first and kind of tell people why this is so darn stinking important?
I can do that. So part of the reason I kind of pushed, badgered, cajoled, kept communicating with Matt about it.
Yeah. Guilted.
I'm going to call it stubborn persistence.
Yes.
Because for an access method, for many of our users whose hands may work or they use a mouth stick in their mouth to point and to touch, there really isn't another thing like this that allows them to freely type letters and numbers independently, right? There's not really another thing that allows this in the same way. And for a lot of our users, they started using an IntelliKeys when they were 3, 4, 5, 6, and it is the independence tool that has continued to follow them. And so when drivers stopped being made, we kind of had this rush of what do we do now? I have a user who's 18 and has used this for 10 years. There's nothing else like it. How do we continue to have them access it? And for some students, we were able to transition them to a stylus plus an iPad keyboard. For many users, this is the thing that made typing independently accessible for them.
Yeah, I think this layout works. I like this better. So my eye opener. So you pushed Adam at AWNet to open source the drivers. Just for the record, so IntelliTools made this product. It was bought by somebody who I forget their name.
Cambium.
Thank you, Cambium. And then they were bought by AWNet, who supported it for a couple years and then end of lifed it. Fair enough.
Yep.
Okay. When that was end of life, it created this problem. And then when Windows 10 came out, it required signed drivers, which meant that the existing drivers simply couldn't work. When Apple came out with the latest Mac, and a lot of these users, a lot of the people who use this device or have to use this device use Mac because of the switch control and the other things on it. when Mac came out with Snow Leopard,
Yeah.
not only did they make the driver not work, they removed the runtime for the language it was written in.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no way in hell we're ever going to be able to get that driver to work there. And that led to me making this prototype, but it didn't really lead to us making this happen with Riptide. The thing that made it happen with Riptide was Jefferson Bickerstaff. And I want to tell the story. And Jefferson, your mom might not like my story, so tell her to leave the room. But I'm going to tell this story anyways because it's really important. Before I do, I want to show why Jefferson needs this, because it is. I'll tell the story first. So I went to. Sorry, there you go. So I went to the GATE conference in Georgia I have the timeline. I'm going to say 2019. I think that's probably it. And Jefferson came up with his mom, and Jefferson has cerebral palsy, and he has a very hard time moving his hands. He has a very hard time speaking. His mom can understand a lot of what he says, and I don't really think a lot of other folks can unless they're around him a lot. And he came to the Lesson Picks booth. I had my other shirt on, and he was kind of angry, at least irritated. How about irritated? Maybe not angry. And I could tell he was irritated, and his mom was trying to thank us for the work we've been doing, and she was being really polite. And Jefferson, without his communication device, without an IntelliKeys and a keypad, was using a touch board, getting letters on a grid of letters that his mom was then relaying to me. And I could tell that she was not relaying what he wanted to say. And what he wanted to say was, I emailed you, you haven't responded to me, and I'm still screwed. Okay. And she didn't want him to say that because it was rude, but it wasn't rude. He was 100% right. He had emailed me. I had not responded to him. And I finally said to her, I said, he's trying to say something else, right? Tell me what it is. And she told me, and I was like, you know what? Let me bring it up. Let me bring up my email, see what you wanted me to do. And it was this huge eye opener for me to say, you know what? Before he lost the ability to use his IntelliKeys, he would have emailed me again, and he would have pestered me, and he would have gotten on the Facebook group, and he would have made it happen. But without it, he's got filters between him and his requests to get help. And they're good-meaning filters. And his mother was a delightful Southern lady, and she was really nice, but she wasn't going to be rude to me. And the right thing to do right then was to be rude to me, right? I mean, Alyssa, am I overstating that?
Absolutely not.
Right. And it is something where I left that conference. I got in the car with Lori. I think it was the year it snowed at GATE, which is weird. We drove home, and I said, I got to find a way to get these made. I had one, right? I had one of these, right? I think I might have made the board that lets them be made. And that's what made me reach out to Riptide and say, okay, let's get a robotics team. And Jackson, I think you'd agree that this was it may have gotten frustrating eventually, right? Because you don't want to do this for the rest of your life, but this was good for your kids, right? Do you agree with that?
Yeah. No, it was a great opportunity. We trained a lot of them. They get to do something meaningful. All the same stuff that revolves around the AT work. It's another positive for everyone.
So one of the nice things about this that I liked about it was it got you directly in contact with AT users, right? So we had the requests for IntelliKeys drivers go directly to the high school students, right? And they had to respond to them, and they had to do the troubleshooting, and they had to ship the device. And Jackson, you made videos explaining how to do the installs and how to do the updates and what to happen if it doesn't work. And
I think we actually did it like at ATIA 2020, like in the lobby. I think that video is probably lost to time somewhere, but there's me explaining it somewhere.
I'm sure nothing is ever lost to time. It is digital. It's here somewhere.
That's true.
So I want to show why, because a lot of people are like, well, Why doesn't he use a tablet? Why doesn't why don't these folks, why isn't there anything new? And so I want to show why, and then I want to show Jefferson showing why. So I'll show it why first. So this is the IntelliKeys, right? And the real reason that this thing is unique comes down to this piece of plastic, right? So whenever I see the demos from Lamore, Dan, and she doesn't have one of these on, I'm like, oh, but you're not going to see the why, right? So the reason that this works is that I can bang my hand on this plastic all day and not trigger anything until I force my finger into the one spot that I'm trying to activate. And I want to show this. Let's see.
Yeah. So in official terms, it's called a key guard.
Right.
Right. So it's got a little bit of raised plastic that will allow, you'll see when Jefferson does it, him to guard his hand and use his hand on top of the board, and then insert his finger down in when he wants to select that letter. And for a lot of young adults who have cerebral palsy or any kind of neuromuscular issue, it makes it really hard for them to not mishit a ton without that key guard there.
Right. And David from Adafruit's community just said his didn't come with a key guard. It doesn't, unless you buy one extra, right? But in the CP community, this is huge, right? This is the reason that this exists. And it really is CP, right? I mean, and there are other reasons for this, but I would say that 90% of the folks who are still completely reliant on IntelliKeys are CP users. Does that sound right, Alyssa?
It's a big chunk of them, but really any kind of neuromuscular issue that causes your muscles to not listen when you ask it to do a task.
Yeah. Okay. So this is why, and Jefferson, I did mute you. I muted your video just because I don't want to get the strike against me for using the Maroon 5 music there. But so I wanted to make sure we showed that and explain to people why this is a big deal and why it's not going to go away, right? There's the likelihood that anybody is going to make a device that does this. The community is a subset of a subset, right? It is a subset of CP, people with cerebral palsy who happen to have arm constrictors, and it is probably 2,000 people in the United States. Does that sound right?
It's not a statistic I keep in my head. It might actually be far wider. And I do know we had quite a large amount of requests from countries that were not the United States.
That's true. Now that, because there's nothing else out there that does this elsewhere in the world. So that's, I really wanted to make sure we showed that. And Jefferson, thank you for letting me share. Thank you for sharing that video. Jefferson shared that video a couple of years ago when I asked if he would. 4 years ago he shared that, and he's just so excited to get the adapter, right? I'd like to, I know this is all IntelliKeys, and really what I said in the beginning was this is about USB hosting, but God, our biggest success has been the IntelliKeys on the USB hosting. The difference is it's no longer a one-hit wonder. So Dan, first, take this back to Adafruit and tell them thank you. I think everybody here would be agree that the fact that you guys are working on this is enormous. And even our first adapter couldn't have happened without your devices, right? But the fact that you're making one directly from it's exactly what we asked for, right? So thank you, and make sure you tell Lamore and Phil thank you, right?
I will. And thanks to TAC also.
Yeah, TAC is a great, he's their developer. He's in Vietnam. He has done all their USB work. And he's been absolutely wonderful. He's responded to me directly. And one of the things I like the best about TAC is I gave these here are the things we learned. Remember that email I sent you that's like, here's the way it works. And we tried all the rest of them and they don't work. And he just did it. It was great. He didn't waste any time. I mean, he did it in C, but he took all of that and just on his first shot nailed it. So I do want to show it working. And one of the cool things about it working here is it works with all of the overlays, which that's kind of cool, right, Alyssa? Yeah, let me take this off.
Yeah, because previously we were kind of limited to, a standard keyboard overlay, or one option essentially.
Right.
And its static, version comes with a couple of different options of a QWERTY kind of layout like you see, but also a single number pattern that has
Right.
basically your numpad replicated on a keyboard.
Yeah. And this I don't really have I don't know how many nested things I could do to actually show it typing. I suppose I can try, but let me just show you for a second. This is the filter going into the original cable, so we don't have to give them one of the goofy little cables anymore. There's no on-the-go cable to break, which is great. It's a standard USB-C cable over here that's going into it. If I don't know that you'll be able to hear it. Maybe if I take this out, it beeps. Yes. And let's put in something different. We'll put in, I don't know, we'll put in this one.
And it recognizes there's a little barcode as he slides
right
it in.
here.
See
Yeah,
on
so
the
right
left
here,
side.
there's little dark spots that it has photocells that reads. It just recognized there's a new one. Unfortunately, for some reason on this one, it comes with numlock off. But if I turn numlock off on my own keyboard, it's changing. There you go. That's I can tell you. It's changing all of the. It's changing all of my views. So it's changing all of my views as I hit the numbers because OBS had the
Keystroke for it. Yeah.
Right. So let me switch back to this. There you go. But yeah, so as I hit numbers, it will type. You'll have to just trust me that it's typing. But yeah, I'm getting equal signs, right? The mouse motion works. Double click doesn't work, and any cells that send more than one keystroke don't currently work.
Yeah.
But like this big mouse works, which that would be huge, right? For a lot of people, especially if there is a key guard for it, which they made key guards for everything, right? So all of them work except the setup, which changes the settings, and things that send, for example, if you look here, this guy sends whoops. I know. Quit yelling at me. Yeah, so like this one sends .org. It just sends the dot. It doesn't send all of it.
Yeah, you can tell the age of them by the launch keystroke in the top right, either launching Internet Explorer, Netscape Navigator.
Right, exactly. They're ancient. Yeah. So I think I have so I have the actual thing up here. I had so in the other one, that's our IKeys adapter. So a lot of this stuff lives on GitHub now, which is great. And here's here. Adafruit and IntelliKeys right here. So they have in their source, actually in the main thing, it actually tells you where they are, right? So at this point, everything works. All the overlays work. The switch on the side is not supported due to a lack of testing hardware, which I am delighted to send them some testing hardware. That won't bother me at all. And multiple reports such as keystrokes like www and .com don't work. The setup overlay doesn't work, and you can't do your own overlays. You can only do the standard ones. Well, this is huge. This is beyond what we have. There are some things that I'm going to feed back to them. They have focused on sensitivity and speed. What that means is that very often, if you look at this, it will. Well, there you go. Here the double hit.
Yeah, I was gonna say that response rate one of it's, similar to ignoring a keystroke unless it's been X amount of time.
Right.
That one is
Exactly.
huge because it allows, there's a couple of other settings like in terms of like only selecting when you lift off. That would be super helpful. But yeah, that
Right.
reduced keystroke time is
These are
a good
settings
setting.
that are on here, like here, right? So the repeat rate, repeat latching, required lift off settings. So these are settings that existed in the original driver. We never implemented them. What we did was we set defaults that were better for CP users, right? Even though you couldn't change them, they were really sent for somebody who's going to slowly go through the cells. I have a note from Jefferson. Do you know why my keyboard sometimes sticks on me when I have to keep pushing the caps lock with the shift key? Yes, it's this issue. And it's because we made choices that you can't override and configure. So hopefully we will get you a more configurable device and certainly a more reliable one. Okay. So this is kind of cool. Ron, I want to chat with you for a second. I'm on the wrong. I have too many controls at my thing. I got too many things going on here. Okay. So Ron is going to you're gonna take this commercial for us, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So just like Ron agreed to take over selling the ones that are made from multiple boards and assembled like these, and assembled into things that look like this, right? We're gonna continue this through you for anybody who wants to just buy them and have them supported. Yes?
Correct.
And so this is less human work, which will be good. Certainly much less likely to fail, right? The likelihood that you're going to program them backwards or they're going to plug them in backwards is zero, right? You can't, because there's only one chip to program, and it's impossible to plug them into the wrong ends of the damn thing, which happened all the time, right?
Right.
It should be more reliable and more stable. And one of the nice things about this is, I think this is a good transition into the USB filter in general. This is a hardware device that has lots of uses, right? You're muted. Say yes.
Somebody's printing something. Sorry.
I don't mind. We don't mind your printer running. Your delightful wife can print whatever she wants.
I'll slip it under the door so she can get it.
It's probably one of the 32 cats.
No, but I know. I'm glad you said hopefully and possibly and should was the word. Big. How many people have actually used this in the field?
Probably 80.
No. I'm talking about the new one.
Oh, none.
Okay.
Well, yeah. So James has used it for a mouse. We'll talk about that in a second.
Right.
I have used it. Is that in the field? Am I
intelligence.
in the field or am I not?
No, you don't count.
I don't count?
No.
Okay. So then I would say James counts. Dan, do you know how many they sold? How many did she make in the first run?
Usually there was 100 that's made in the first run, but then when it gets restocked, there are more. So
Yeah. So, I mean, I bought 15 of those. So, less than 85. Right. David Gloud is on here, and he actually is using it in the wild, and he had an issue. And Dan, you can take this back to Lamore. Don't tell her it came from me because she's already grumped with me. But the pull-up on the voltage regulator for the 5-volt was not strong enough. So while it should default to on and be able to be pulled down, his defaulted to off. He literally had to turn the pin on, or the USB didn't work. So you follow that?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
surprised. I mean, maybe that might be deliberate that it's deliberate. It's off.
No, because
So-
all the other ones, I opened 5 of them. They all came on. His is the
Oh,
only
okay. There
that
was
didn't.
one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think it could have been a defect, or it could be, a slightly weak, a slightly stronger pull-up might be needed there, right?
Okay.
So, but Ron, to answer your question, yes, that's where we are. We're in the early days of the hardware. But the good news here is it's not us. It's not a bunch of I don't know, weekend warriors. What's the right term for people like us who are either robotics teams or me or you? I mean, all of us had other careers and do not do hardware manufacturing for a living, right? Whereas Lemore makes these all day, and I happen to know she's a testing nut. And if there is any issues with these, the hardware won't be the problem, right? At least not after a burn-in period. Sound right? Dan, do you agree with that?
Yes, yes, and
Lemore
also like for instance, this like we can change the software to fix this pull-up problem. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
but
yeah.
there's a period where you have to do that, right?
Yeah.
I think that's probably the hardware is not going to be the issue. I mean, Lemore will pull a product before she has a buggy one out there in a minute. I've seen her do it. So, but I think our part is less error prone on this. You agree with that, Ron?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So, I think a couple things that are people mentioned in the comments that I will show. Another thing that Adafruit has done kind of on my request last week, I had started making a USB host case for this. And the idea here was to have it also capture the cables so that it would not be able to be pulled out easily. And I showed this to them, and we talked through it, and they said, you can do that, but we want one that actually doesn't. And so they made this, which is a great case for it. They added these slots so that you can zip tie it down to a chair or to a desk or whatever. It's got the buttons for reset and boot on the top. It's got a spot for the indicator and a spot to plug in the if you want to add a sensor to it. So it's a great general case for their enclosure. Let me turn off the top here so you guys can see. It should be easy to assemble and it's snap fit. So, Ron, did you make one of these? Did you print one of these?
I already have them listed for sale.
You already have them listed for sale. Okay.
With
there
credit,
you go.
with appropriate credit.
Excellent. Do you have one you can show?
Yeah, I got half a dozen of them.
So we had this conversation
in light green.
Excellent.
This is a PLA, happens to be PLA, prints out fine. On my Prusa, between the top and the bottom, it's taken about 55 minutes.
Yeah, one of the reasons he said for sale was my idea, Dan, in that we were talking about the fact that some people are just going to buy this from Adafruit, right? And what they're going to have trouble with in our community is they're not going to be able to 3D print the case. So I had suggested him 3D printing the case I was building, but you're absolutely right. I mean, these things are Creative Commons share alike commercial, correct? Dan?
I hope so.
You mean the boards?
No. The 3D.
Yeah,
the
3D.
case.
Right there. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, he can do
They're
that.
liberally
Yes.
licensed. Yeah.
Yes, they're liberally licensed from my liberal friend in Massachusetts.
Good.
So, to my not so liberal friend you're pretty liberal, Ron, in Austin. So he's the most liberal person in Texas. There you go. So he's a damn hippie, right? Isn't that a good way to describe you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There you go. So I suggested the fact that some people they're going to want to do it for their own. And a good example of this would be somebody like Jefferson. If he wanted to buy a replacement, he could buy this and he could have his mom plug it in and he could program it, but he's not going to be able to 3D print it. And given that you're also going to sell the boards pre-programmed, why not also sell the case, right? So I think that's a good solution. It takes it off the charity. The charity's job at this point is if somebody can't buy one for whatever reason, they're young, it's a school system, can't get it through the system, they're out of the country or whatever, AT makers will fund them. But I don't think we're going to do distribution. We'll just fund Ron and have him ship it. Sound right?
Yeah, but that's another big thing is I ship worldwide.
Right.
So, and I
Exactly.
have shipped worldwide. I
Yep.
think I have more devices outside the US than inside right now.
Excellent. Excellent. So let me see if I have let's see, any other questions on here. Brady, I'm not sure why he said AT makers, but okay. David, David Gloud says maybe there's a patent on the hardware and 20 years later it's not protected anymore, so the vendor's less interested. I think he's talking about the key guards and the IntelliKeys itself. There's not a patent on key guards. I'm certain of that. I don't believe there was a patent on the IntelliKeys, but it is not on any of the. It's on the specific. It's a design patent. It is not on the idea of touch screen communication. That would have been a problem for a lot of people if they had a patent on touch screen communication, right? But somebody suggested, I think it might have been Chris Young, said, can we make key guards for iPads, Android tablets, and Kindles? We can, to a certain extent. We can make them. There are systems to make them now. There are online systems to. And Chris said, you asked, what do we call people like us? And Brady said, AT makers. Got it. But can we make key guards? Alyssa, you're in the best position to answer this. Can we make key guards for iPads?
Absolutely. So there are some that are sold commercially. Volkswitch has actually put out a kind of adapt your own based on the designs.
Right.
There are a couple of folks who do kind of a packaged, you can buy your case and have a 3D printed key guard. It involves needing customization because, depending on the iPad and depending on what you're doing on the iPad, if you just want it to have the keyboard, pop up so that you can use that keyboard, well, it's got to be able to swing away because there are times when that keyboard's not there and you need to be able to access it. So there are definitely options for 3D printing. I know for iPads, we have looked at designing for a Kindle, and there's absolutely possibilities. I think it's just thinking about how do you want to use that device,
Right.
and then what support do you need for the key guard to do that.
And that doesn't give you a keyboard. It gives you a tablet with a key guard on it. Right?
Correct.
So if you want to use if you want to use a Mac, or if you want to use Windows or a tablet or control your TV or anything like that, that's not really an option. I'd love to ask Jefferson. Oh, there he goes. So he says, so Jefferson says this, sometimes in Photoshop, I can't drag a window at all. Jefferson, if you don't mind, I hate to give you questions, but I'd love to hear, and I'll just put it up here. I'd love to hear why you don't switch to an iPad. I know you don't, right? And I know you lost one of the interesting things. I'm going to put this up again for a second. This comment couldn't have made it to us during the time when his IntelliKeys was dead, right? He couldn't have done this. So certainly typing into a Facebook comment isn't something that a communication device is going to help you with, right, Alyssa?
Not as easily. So most every communication app has a share function, especially if you're iOS or Android based, where then it essentially puts it copied on your clipboard that you then go paste in whatever app you're using.
Yes.
And so it's a multi-step process if you're using on the dedicated or app-based communication systems.
Right. So the answer to answer Chris, we certainly could take a cheap tablet with a touch screen, right, and make a dedicated keyboard that maybe changed modes and was better and had a key guard and had it just output keystrokes. You know what we would use to do that? We would probably use like this, right? I mean, we could certainly take a resistive touchpad, put an overlay on it, and have this spit out the keyboard for us, right? So there are options there, but there are a lot more options with this progress, right? So so Chris says, my only concern is one of these days IntelliKeys are going to break beyond repair, or our audience is going to exceed availability. It's okay to keep them alive as long as possible, but there's a finite supply that is going to eventually disappear through entropy. He is right, except he's not quite right, is he, Alyssa?
Let me go back and read.
He thinks that we're going to run out of IntelliKeys.
So I don't think it will happen in anywhere near in the near future. Probably every other week, at least once a month, I get an email from somebody or a message from somebody that says, hey, we found 10 of them. I don't necessarily have any, have any need for them. Does somebody else need them? So I think there are way more out there. We tried very early on in this process to get a feel for what did people have out there.
Yep.
If they were going to use it, did they want to use Mac or PC? And based on what we heard, there are still a tremendously large inventory. Is that going to last forever? No. But I don't think in the near or even far near future, we're going to be in a place where we can't get one to somebody who needs it as a replacement.
Yep. And I have people who you get one offer once a month. I have finally started forwarding them to you because I have 100 here that are, some of them are tested, some of them are not. I have a bad one right next to me because I tested it and it was bad because I wanted to show this demo. So I don't know that all the ones we get are in great condition, but we have a stockpile. And if we put out an all call and said, hey, to all the AT directors in the country, we need 15 or we need 150 IntelliKeys.
Yeah.
They're in closets around the country sitting idle. So, and Chris says it's good to know.
One other thing I would add, like about the iPad situation or the tablets and phones in particular, is that they're all capacitive, right? So they require human touch or something that mimics it. I've had a number of users who have to use resistive because they're using a prosthetic or have a long fingernail or something like that. And that's where the IntelliKeys pays off too, is because it's a pure resistive surface.
Yeah. Yep. And it's something where I think you will, if you've used this with the key guard, if you've ever slammed your hand on this and worked the finger in and pressed the button, right? It's not going to work. You're well before then, you're going to trigger that capacitive touch on one of your other fingers. And when you finally do get into there, you're going to hit it 17 times, right? You're going to hit that thing over and over and over again. So there's going to be a lot of logic to to debounce a capacitive touch screen that works this way. So Jefferson says, I use an iPad, but I need to make a key guard to use it. So I think that's in response to my question to him. I think it is worth noting that the world expects us to have keyboards, right? I mean, you still need a keyboard. All of us use tablets, and we all still use keyboards, right? Everybody here except for maybe Jackson, because he's young enough. Maybe he doesn't need a keyboard. So I think that's worth doing. I think I want to move to, and if Jefferson, if you have anything else you want me to share, I'll be happy to jump back to it. But I want to go on and show the other uses for this, right? It's why James is here, and I think it's good for us to remember that that it's necessary, that there's other things here. There we go. So the other thing that we've done with this recently, and James is marginally successful with it. Not even. He's not even successful with it yet. How about that? Is that fair, James? I don't hear you, sir.
That's a fair comment.
You've been what?
I said that's a fair comment.
Yeah. So you're not successful yet, but you see a potential here, correct? You muted yourself. Come on. You muted yourself, sir. Yeah. Still can't hear you, James. I can't. There you go. There you go.
This isn't the first rodeo I went to about doing a tremor filter. I started this journey back in the middle of last year. And that's how I found out about AT makers. I wasn't looking for a feather. I didn't even know they existed or what they were. In fact, I didn't know much about Arduino or any of the products out like that, or Adafruit at that time. And I just chimed in on one of the forums and said, hey, I'd like a Arduino compatible board with 2 USB ports on it. And everybody blew up and said, oh, you need USB, you need host on it. And I didn't know anything about that either at the time. And I found out that it's a lot harder to travel, a lot more road to travel than what I was intending to go.
Yeah, so he's right. USB host is not the. And I will mute you as needed here, James.
Okay.
James has he is the problem causing us flickers or echoes. So but USB host is the ability for a device to take in a input from a keyboard, a mouse, a gamepad, and process it. Whereas USB device is the ability for it to act like a keyboard or a mouse or something like that. All of these devices can act like keyboards, mice, and gamepads, consumer controls, things like that. But very few of them can act as a host. And then Dan's going to say that's not quite true. Very few of them can do both. How about that? Is that fair?
Most of them can't do host either. I mean, it's pretty... Not as many chip families do host.
Right. So, I mean, the Teensy can, right? And I think the Teensy is the only one that traditionally has been able to. But it has not been an easy thing to do. And so it's probably worth mentioning that the only reason that all this is possible right now from a technical side is that the folks at the Raspberry Pi Foundation, when they made this chip, you'll see there's a little raspberry on there. When they made that chip, which is the RP2040, they created this really ridiculous setup called PIO. Dan, you want to play professor for a second and explain to us what PIO is?
Sure. So it stands for programmable I/O, and it's really a very tiny processor with a very simple instruction set that can control a bunch of pins. And you can send a data, and you can decide to send out the data or bring in data at a fast rate and run independently of the main processor. But it's really simple. It's like good for doing the low-level USB stuff. It's good for like NeoPixels or something.
It's almost like, I mean, it's not an FPGA, but the idea is it's going to give you something really low level that you're going to program in assembler, and it lives inside of the chip that gives you a nice high-level interface. Does that sound
right? And the size of the program is only like 32 instructions.
Right.
And those instructions are really set up. What those instructions can do has all to do with pin input-output.
Right.
Okay.
And it's something where when it first came out, a lot of people were like, what the hell is this? But what it enabled madness, right? People are doing crazy things. I mean, and this is your life right now, right? So how many Bones boards does Lady Ada have out?
I don't know. It's like 5 or 6 or so. Right. So it can do, besides USB host, we have one that does DVI, which is basically HDMI. So we have video going out, also using PIO. We have CAN bus, which is what is used in the cars,
and all the wheelchairs.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah. All right. So And another use for it is also just driving these like red, green, blue LED
Well,
strips for
and
displays.
Jackson, aren't all the first robotics CAN bus?
That is correct. That's kind of the standard they use for all the sensors and stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, CAN bus is kind of everywhere.
So PIO, because it's programmable, can do any of these things. And that's
Right.
the point. Yeah.
And so a gentleman in Japan took PIO and made a USB host program in PIO. I can't even pronounce his name. Neither can Lemore. It's kind of funny every time she tries to say it. I don't even try. And then Lemore had TAC layer tiny USB or teeny USB. Which is it, Dan?
It's tiny. It's spelled tiny. She says teensy for fun.
All right. So it's tiny USB on top of it. And then on top of that, he wrote an Arduino library so that you can literally write Arduino code that just uses USB host. Right. So that's technically why we're able to do this. And she took, I actually, here, I'll show you my prototype of this board, right? So mine's smaller. See, Dan? So I took the Cutie Pie RP2040 and made a little board that has nothing but a couple of resistors that connect to a USB host. And I made this thing. And I was gonna use this. I had all kinds of these. I had one of these that was gonna plug in to a USB port. I have like all different ways to make USB host, and all of them, thankfully, are garbage now. It's fabulous. I'm absolutely thrilled, and you can tell her that I am absolutely delighted that she made all of my hardware outdated. It's wonderful. So that's what this is. James, you and I have been working to make a Tremor Mouse, and the idea here is we would like to be able to take the shakes out of mouse movement, no matter what device you wanted to use it on. Correct? Yeah. Oh, let me unmute you. That was my fault. Go ahead. Yeah, that was correct. Correct.
Yes, that's what we want to do. We want to get the shakes out of the hand. Something that's simple, just plug and play and use it.
Yeah, and James, you have the central tremors in your hand, correct?
If you'll excuse me, that's my tremor. That's the way it goes. That's the worst case of it. I don't have it so much in the other hand, but my fingers, excuse me, shake a bit as well.
So, out of curiosity, and it's just curiosity, you don't have to answer it. Is there an underlying illness here, or is this just an essential tremor?
Okay, quick medical defect. Essential means idiopathic, means I don't know where the hell caused this problem.
Okay.
And even the best experts are split. They don't know what causes it.
Okay. Well, it sucked, and I've got a lot of people asking for this. Somebody told about us to the Essential Tremors group on Facebook.
Guilty as charged.
Don't know who it could have been, but so we would really like to solve this at this point, and I think it's possible. So I've made some progress. I made a device that's, I think, what you saw, a video of me reducing the shake of a mouse using a logarithm filter, using orthogonal filters where it only moves up and down or left and right, and using a moving average filter. All of which are basic math applied to the motion of the mouse as it goes through the filter. And I'd like to show that, but I also, Dan, I want to make sure Dan's aware of something. And let's be very clear for James, we aren't successful with you yet, right?
That's right. There's still some problems to resolve. Some of the bits we want to smooth out a bit more.
Yeah, but it definitely, let me show what it does do, and then, or if you'd like, you can, but I've got the overhead, and I think I can show it. And I'll also show people what we're using to do it, because it's something built on top of the other stuff, and there's some nifty stuff we're going to want to use in it. So I'm using the IntelliKeys as a mouse pad. It's probably sacrilege, right, Alyssa? All right, so let's do this. Let me show this, and yeah, all right, this will work. We'll make this work. I'm gonna make y'all go away for a second. Just me. That's all it's gonna be, is me. But not me. There you go. On the fly editing. All right, so let's see. This is Inkscape. Why I'm using Inkscape, I don't know, because I can.
Are you going to be coding in Inkscape?
No, I do a lot of coding in Inkscape, believe it or not. That's my day job, is Inkscape. What I want to be able to show you guys is me moving this thing around, okay? And so let me back this up, show my mouse. All right, this is the best I'm going to get, okay? I learned before that the mouse shrinks on your screen, so it doesn't, oops, that doesn't help. This, so. All right, so if my hand is, I'm out of focus, sorry. Right. If my hand is shaking, right, and I'm holding this, my hand is shaking, it's kind of all over the place, right? If I turn on the filter on this and my hand is shaking, no matter how much I'm moving this, it's moving less, right? Whereas if I'm doing that same motion, it's just, see, I go nuts. Here. Whatever. You guys are going to have to understand this. So what we're doing here is we're taking the motion and we're applying it to a filter that basically is trying to knock off big motions. So big motions like this become smaller motions, but small motions still move. It's not quite enough. We need to probably have the ability to zoom in and change it to a higher res when he's moving slowly. And the way we're doing this right now, and it drives me crazy when it's on because it's just, I can't move my mouse. The way we're doing this right now is we're using a tool called, we're using it up down here. We're using a tool called HID Remapper. So this is a tool that is downloadable. It's from GitHub right here. And this is an open source tool built on the same foundation as the same PIO code that Dan was talking about. And this gentleman in Poland named Jacek, I'm not sure how you say it, Jacek maybe, really nice guy, made this device, made it work with the Adafruit Feather, and then I went and added the ability to add logarithm functions to it. Okay, the way it works, and the thing I want everybody kind of here to take away from this, there you go, is the way this thing configures. This is a web interface. When I hit open device, it uses a protocol called WebHID, WebHID, to connect to the device directly. And now I can go and load the mapping that I'm currently using on this device. I can go in and say, I want the middle button to switch between layers. That's how we turn it on and off. When the cursor comes in, I want to apply this horrible expression. And some of you will notice this is RPN, reverse Polish notation. Jacek is Polish, but I don't think that's why it's reverse Polish. This is a horrible expression that allows us to apply a logarithm or otherwise to to the input and take it and send it back out. So I think, yes, I think James, you would agree that this is not yet adequate, but it feels like we're in the right direction, right?
It feels like you're going in the right direction. There's one more quirk of essential tremors. It's called intention. And as somebody points at something, they intend to touch that, their tremors get worse. And that's one of the problems to tackle, because you try and move the mouse intentionally into the close window box or the icon window box or full screen window box, whatever OS you're using. And your intention is to get it there, and your tremor gets worse as you get closer.
So Dan, is there a feature in Windows that jumps to buttons? Didn't there used to be a feature that would like have your mouse jump to, or maybe Ron?
Yeah, yeah. Snap to or something. I think it was snap.
So James, maybe we can do some combination if we can go back, and that might be ancient history. That might be like Windows 7 or something. Jackson, your hair looks fine. But if we, yeah, I know that was mean. Yeah, sue me. So maybe there's something in the not too distant past there. I mean, that would limit you to Windows or anything else that does that. But do you think that there's something? What about James? If we had something where it continued when you stopped moving, it kept going in the direction you were going for a period of time, like a landing zone where you weren't in control anymore. Oh, I'm sorry, that's me.
Okay.
So yeah.
The email I sent you last night is the problem when you get very close to it. Odd thing about tremors is they either go from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock along that diagonal, or they run, that's for a right-handed person. For a left-handed person, such as myself, they run from about 10 o'clock down to 4 o'clock. And that's because of the way the arm is built. It will oscillate along an axis that is orthogonal to the 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. If you draw that line, it's going to be at right angles to that is where the rotation occurs. It's just a quirk of it. I can look at somebody's handwriting that's got essential tremors and tell whether they're left-handed or right. I've never examined handwriting before, just because I can look at where the tremors are.
Right. So I guess my goal with this is not to solve essential tremors, right? My goal with this is to get James, somebody who has essential tremors, enough tools for him to be able to play with this and figure out a solution and report it back, right? That's James, that's the goal here, right?
Yes, exactly. This fellow in Poland that wrote this code, Janovic or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know him at all, or have you had
I
conversations
emailed
with
him and sent him updates. Yeah, but that's it.
Okay. I just was thinking about approaching and describing the problem that we're looking at. And
so what I found, maybe this is just a good thing to explain to the non-technical people. And Dan, correct me, and Ron, correct me if I'm wrong. What I found with folks who are running projects on GitHub is that the best thing for you to do is to ask for any entry points or access points and offer to do the work. Right? So does that sound right to you, Dan? Like if there's something blocking you, tell them, but don't ask them to do the work. Does that sound right?
Yeah, you could say like, how can I contribute to this? Right. I mean, maybe you're not able to because you're not a programmer.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can contribute. Like everybody here can, like, you can contribute the success story, right? That is the, like, Dan would or Lamore would love videos of people successfully using these devices in the field. Fair enough?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'll put it in the chat. I was going to say, like, we've thanked Lamore, and I can pass this on, but if you write, I'll put in an email address. If you want to write to send a thank you, that's great. And if you want to discuss things, you wouldn't use email, but I'll give you our Discord and our forums, and you could write in there.
Yes,
also.
I'm familiar with them. You know that.
Yeah, but I'll give them to other people.
Yeah, we should absolutely
we'll
put it in post it on Facebook as well. It's
Yeah.
a great Discord server as well. And not all Discord servers are for disclosing government secrets.
Right.
Just a couple of them, right? So I would my goal with James is to, if something needs to change in Yasek's code, I will do that on my fork for you when you tell me you need it. And then we will push that back to Yasek and allow him to take it if it's generally useful. So that's how I think this is going to work. You're going to do the part that you can, ask me for help with the parts that you can't, and I will coordinate with Yasek. I think is the way that should work. And I might be wrong, or it might be Chris Young, right? But it's some programmer in the AT Makers community. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Sounds like a good way forward.
Okay. Yeah. So, and what I like about this is that we have a foundation, a hardware foundation that is much more stable now, right? It is not about and Leanne didn't make it to this chat. She wasn't invited, but had something else. But it's not about getting Leanne's robotics team to figure out how the next generation of kids is going to learn how to make and distribute and support this device. Make, distribute, and support is Adafruit. Right, Dan? That's it. You make it, you distribute it, you support the hardware.
Right.
And then customize, make a final product, and sell it to our community is Ron. Yes?
Correct.
Right. And my job is boiled down to prototype, troubleshoot, interact with the AT community to find out what we need from folks like Alyssa, right? Alyssa's going to come to me and say, we're screwed because we have this. Or people go to the AT Makers Facebook group and say, we're screwed because we need this. They say that a lot. They don't use those words. It's exactly what they mean when they come to the AT Makers group. It's for some reason they're screwed. So I do want to go back briefly and go through. Jefferson posted a few things. Remember, my original comment was, if you could post, why don't you use this? I'm going to try and go through and excuse me, post these through. He says, I can use an iPad, but I need to make a key guard to use it. I even tried plugging in my keyboard into an adapter for my iPad and iPhone. I need a key guard to be able to use any device. My key guard for my IntelliKeys is so old, it is broken. Can I buy one anywhere these days? You can't. I will send you one. I think Alyssa and I have a few. I have about 5. I guess, Jefferson, tell me if you want a square one or a round one. I have a round one here.
Yeah, and I know at one point we had looked at doing, and actually I think the robotics group at PK did some mock-ups in CAD of what it would look like to do a 3D printed one, and I think it just took way too long and way too much filament for what's involved in it.
It's not just too much filament. The problem with this device, let's show it again. So the problem with this device, let me turn off this thing here, is that so this size right here is a legal paper.
Kind of, sort of, with a little more.
So it's a little bit small. You can print it on 8.5 by 14. So it's 8 by 13 or some stupid number like that. This was a decision made long ago by a guy named Armin, who's awesome and was super helpful to us, that has screwed all the 3D printers since, right? Because this does not fit on any standard 3D printer.
Correct.
It doesn't fit on a Prusa. It doesn't fit on. I think it fits on a Ender 3 Max is the only consumer 3D printer that will print this size overlay. Okay.
Right.
In addition, the way they made these is really nice and not maker friendly. So check this out.
Mm-hmm. It's got that little beveled ledge
so
that catches.
They bent the acrylic here. Before they bent it, they routed a notch in it. They bent it, and then they heat set in a little piece of filament acrylic to make a catch. And that actually has on the back here, I don't know if I can show you this, but on the back, there's actually a groove that this thing will fit into.
With, yeah.
Right. So really, you got your it's not a maker friendly build to make one of these, right? I have thought about the fact that if I had like a larger laser printer, and if anybody wants to donate a nice large, not laser printer, laser cutter to AT makers, if we could make this size acrylic and cut it out, I think we could 3D print the little clips that bolted onto it that did the catching. But still, it's absolutely not. It's a non-trivial thing, and I know I should have made that bigger. I'm sorry, guys. Not you, James, me. But this is a non-trivial piece of plastic to make. I've looked through this. It kind of sucks. People, I have somebody made later. I don't know if I still have it within arm's reach. I have a later version of this that didn't have the wraparound, and it has little pieces of Velcro, and it just sucks because Velcro sucks. It's not a good solution, right? Right.
Well, and oftentimes those little wraparounds tend to break, and so often you would see the Velcro attempts to save a key guard that had lost its wraparound legs.
Yeah, you'll notice
hands or whatever you want to call them.
The one that I'm showing here has 3.
Yeah,
it has 3 of its legs.
Yeah.
Okay, I would take this like a different direction.
Yeah.
Well, first off, I would never 3D print this. I would use a laser or a CNC router.
Right. For the flat.
Both of which, Bill, I have.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
All right.
It's big enough to hold that.
Make them and sell them.
There's already people selling key guards, so I'm
not for this.
So the other thing is I wouldn't do any of the bendy nonsense that they have going on there because that's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Instead, I would probably make a bigger frame that would be permanently attached or semi-permanently attached to the IntelliKeys, which then this one would kind of drop into, and you can hold it in place with, let's say, 4 magnets or 6 magnets, something like that. So ploop, take
kind
it
of like
off.
the bed of the 3D printers when they have the
like a Prusa steel bed where you could just pop it off and
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And then you'd probably 3D print the bigger frame, right? You'd do that in pieces.
No, it's too slow.
Well,
I would either.
I'll be happy to send you. I'll be happy to have Alyssa send you an IntelliKeys key guard to mimic.
Yeah, I mean you could, but the thing is, because my wife and I have done a lot of acrylic work. We actually did these art projects with pixels, and it was a mixture of laser cutting small pieces and CNC routing larger ones. And my shop bot can rip through a piece of acrylic far faster than a 3D printer can do anything.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Ron, I mean, you could also, I don't even think you'd need to build a frame if you use sufficiently strong magnets.
Right.
You just have to mount the magnets around the border of the thing.
You mean like CA glue them?
Yeah. Do you have an IntelliKeys, Ron?
Yeah, I've got 2 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the only barrier is a large portion of our population have shunts because they have hydrocephalus.
Right.
And if their shunt is a programmable shunt, large magnets anywhere in their vicinity is ill-advised.
Yeah,
But we
I don't know that
probably
these
have
are that large, right? We're talking about neodymium little magnets.
the strong caution is to avoid magnets in any proximity if at all possible. But I think there are probably people out there that doesn't apply to, and that could be a solution for sure.
Right.
Okay. So Alyssa, if you could do research on whether arm's length of little magnets is an issue, that would probably be good for us to know, right?
I can certainly do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. And Ron, certainly, I didn't mean for us to do prototyping and discussion here, but I'm glad we are.
Yeah, thanks a lot. More work to do.
So I have actually comments from David. He says, so a way to freeze the mouse before clicking, like middle click to temporarily stop the X and Y, just to make sure you don't click in the wrong place, like pre-click. It's a good idea. Certainly something that this could do. And he says, would that not help? I don't know. What I'd like to do maybe is to start a thread on AT Makers about Tremor Mice and maybe move this conversation over there. Maybe David, maybe James, let me unmute you. If you want to watch for that, I will. I'd love it if you kind of made sure you participated in that.
Sure, I'm on there every day. I'll watch what's going on.
Yeah, I'll make sure I tag you so you'll get a notice.
So one question I have for James is, what about the other commercial products that are already out there? Are they any good or?
Okay, for Windows, there's a software-only Tremor Mouse. It's about $50. It only works on Windows, and I don't think it works on Windows 11 yet. The other one, IBM built one back about year 2000, and a company in England manufactured it for about $110, but they've went out of business. So the only ones that are on the market seem to be, I believe, Denmark, and they're running about $300 a pop for this device that basically does exactly what this USB host RP2040 does.
Right, because I had looked at that device in the past because I didn't want to recreate the wheel if there's already a product out there. But if that product works, but it's a matter of cost, do you think? Is it primarily the?
Have you
$300 is outside of my budget, so
yeah.
I haven't bought one and tried it.
Okay.
So, but it might be worthwhile for us to send you one, right? Because if nothing else, it tells us if their approach works, right?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, you don't mind being a guinea pig.
I've been digging about this subject since the first announcement of the RP2040 host.
Yep.
I've got all the scientific literature that's been published on PubMedicine on that. I've been through all of those. That's why I got a fairly comprehensive list of what has been available and what hasn't, hardware and software wise.
So I agree with you that your knowledge with the development group here will probably come up with something that helps you. I'm curious. One of the things we do, let me turn you off here for a second. Sorry. One of the things we do, we don't always solve things just if it's a commercial. If there's a commercial product that's too expensive, there are times when that is enough of a reason for us to do it. I'll give you a great example because I don't mind picking on them. The EMG switches. We can make those, and they're 17 grand to buy the only commercial product out there. And we can make them for under $100. I have no problem making it a priority to make those for folks. If it's going to cost us, if a reasonable cost is $100 and it's on the market for $300, we have to look at how many folks it's going to support to make a long-term project. To me, this isn't really about that. To me, this is a great example of what we can do with mouse filters more than a specific tool for essential tremors. Do you follow? So you are one of the things I want to solve with a hardware product that Ron's going to write. Ron's going to right? So I definitely want to solve this, but that doesn't mean we don't start with the solutions that are out there and learn from them, right? So if we can have one of the options on the USB filter, a tremor remover, absolutely, right? And I saw Dan that Liz Blitz City DIY. That's Liz, right?
Right.
So she's got a tremor filter based on a
Butterworth filter or something. Yeah, an
a
low pass
Butterworth
filter.
right? A
Yeah,
Butterworth
low pass filter. Right. Digital
and
filter. Yeah.
it was less effective for me than mine is, and mine isn't adequate for James. So I made one based on the log filter because it will be more effective than what's there. But it's definitely something that I think Adafruit would also like to see this as an application for this. Yes?
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And so, and honestly, James, Dan would be another person who can take your ideas and implement them much better than I can or Ron can. I mean, he's an MIT professor who teaches people to code. And just to embarrass him, he's the author of More, the original author of the program More. There are geeks in the world who are like, no way, really? But you were, right?
That's right. I'm not a professor, though. Yeah.
You teach at MIT.
No, I don't.
No?
No. I went to MIT.
All right, you went to MIT. What do you do? Oh, you work for Adafruit now. What do
I have a PhD, but I'm not a professor.
All right, fair enough. All right, so we are over time. Let's see. Jefferson says, I don't think it matters if the holes in the keyguard are round or square. My keyboard has 3 legs left. Sometimes it raises up if I happen to hit it the wrong way. I tape it when it starts moving around. Where there's a will, there's a way. LOL. I love the fact that you were able to type that, buddy, because like when I saw you, I was so mad. I was actually mad at your mom a little bit too, because she wouldn't say what you wanted her to say, and you were mad at her too. I'll tell her you were mad at her. There's absolutely no doubt on that. So, but I'm delighted that we've made this progress, James. I appreciate you coming on and sharing this, Dan. Thank everybody at Adafruit. It's definitely, I know that I pushed too hard on this one. I probably took advantage of a friendship, but it was absolutely worth it, and she'll get over it. But I think it is fabulous that this exists. And I think everybody here at least recognizes that this opens a lot of other options for us. So make sure they say that you tell them thank you. Does anybody have questions before we go on? I mean, I guess we should do next steps. The next step for me is to, I just forked the IntelliKeys, Adafruit IntelliKeys repository on GitHub. I will probably open a couple of issues. Like one of the bugs right now, Dan, is that when you change the overlays, it always turns off numlock and turns on caps lock. Well, turning off numlock on this one makes it useless because there is no numlock button, and you have to have the numbers, right? So like it should look at which one it is and set the numlock and caps lock in a sane way. So I'll probably open an issue for that, and then I might take on a couple of those left to dos. Like maybe I'll do the switch support and do a pull request for it. And if I get spare time, and spare time is one of those words that I don't ever use because my wife kills me. If I use the word spare time, and it's not just me, Alyssa, is she waiting on too many things for me right now?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Right. So there's other things on my plate that are more important than this. But and only because there are adapters out there right now. But I might take on this one. I may take on doing the settings one and actually supporting all the settings that used to be supported in the driver.
So
at least-
I have a next steps question.
Yeah.
Just today, I received another request that's based on the form that's on the AT Makers website. Where are we in terms of processing those coming in, and or at what point are we sending them to Ron? I guess I just need a little guidance from that, and it doesn't have to be right now.
So all new requests should be forwarded to Ron.
Okay.
Any request where we have said we would send them one should be forwarded to Ron with a note that AT Makers is responsible for the cost of this one.
Gotcha. Okay.
And Ron, you can credit me the ones I've given you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I just went to, just full disclosure, I went to Austin. I see your hand, James. One sec. I went to Austin to see my daughter and met up with Ron at Duluth Trading and gave him a handful of boards so that he could get some out because I guess Adafruit is out of trinkets. Dan, is that right?
SAMB 21.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
There's usual supply issues. Microchip
Yes.
is
And I think
difficult.
I just checked the other day. I think DigiKey and Mauser has them in stock again.
Okay, so we can start making them, and you have at least 6 or 7 that you could get out the door right away.
Correct.
Right. All right. I'm sorry, James. Go ahead.
Question for Ron. Have you got any idea what the commercial cost will be? The $17 for the basic electronics in a box out the door, or is that something to be considered?
Right. The electronics are whatever the electronics are. The parts are the parts. The 3D printing, the way I figure out pricing is 10 cents a minute. So it's 55 minutes. So it's $5.50 for the enclosure. Because contrary to what people think, 3D printing is not free. Machines cost money. And then it would be whatever labor I have, which on this is programming it. I won't even have a soldering job. So I actually see it coming down from the original IntelliKeys cost. I'm selling those, I think, for 50 something. It would want to say half of that.
Yeah. We were talking about a couple things about Ron. He's very. Let me mute you, James. Raise your hand or yell at me if you need to. One of the things about Ron, he's very open and transparent about how he does his costs. And one of the things we talked about the other day is, given the support time necessary, the programming might change the cost. Like one programmed for an IntelliKeys might cost different than one program for a Tremor Mouse, because IntelliKeys users inherently need more support, right? And you have to bake that in somewhere. Also, if you do new development, like if Ron takes on a brand new filter for something else, like somebody wants an XAC adapter that takes a mouse and outputs an XAC joystick, and he writes that, you've got to amortize that over a number of units, right? So, but I think Ron will always be transparent on how he got his prices, right?
I mean, if we can get it out for under $40, I think it'll be a big thing.
Yeah.
Just to let you know about the marketplace, there's approximately 10 million people in North America with essential tremors.
Wow. How many of them do you think it impacts their mouse ability?
I have no idea, but I would guess somewhere 20 or 30% of those people would want it, would be useful for them.
Right.
Oh, I have a friend of mine who has essential tremors, and I know exactly what you're going through.
Yeah. I want to say one thing. Our goal in the long run, as much as he hates it, is not to make Ron rich. My goal in the long run would be to have this be successful enough that this is an option, a standard option in the AT features of the operating systems, right? If we have the algorithm right and it's open source, there's no excuse for Apple not to have it, right? There's no excuse for Windows not to have it. And this also is something that if we get it right, could end up in a software only solution for these operating systems, right? I'm okay with all of those options, and that's why everything's open source, right? That's why whatever solution we do come up with, whatever algorithm we do come up with, we will open source it, and it will be able to be added to another commercial product with attribution, right? So we have to remember that. And Ron, I'm sure Ron doesn't want to get rich. Told you he's a
No,
hippie. He's not like
absolutely
me. He's
not. I mean,
not a
my
mercenary
stuff
like
is
me.
the MIT license. You don't even have to attribute me. So,
You can't. Yeah, you have to leave the copyrights in place, right?
well, for other people's, but not for the code I write.
Okay, fair enough. No, you're right. Not for your code, right? So, it is. We will also do proper attribution, even if it's not required, because it's just rude, right? So, James, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Jackson, how's college treating you?
Pretty good. It's been a good time.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Working on a lot of stuff. I'm excited to see how this project has evolved, because I remember conversations that we had sporadically many years ago, seeing where it was at and seeing what's come of it. It's fantastic. And so you never know. I'm definitely going to be on the lookout, see if there's a place I can hop in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're on the Facebook group, right? That's where you follow.
Yes, I'm bad about social media, contrary to popular belief, but I need to get more active on there. I'll check it out some.
All right.
I know where to find it.
All right, I'm going to check the comments. If anybody's got questions, either on YouTube or Facebook, post them. I will take a quick look. Let's see.
The one other thing is just one more thing. We've talked about the IntelliKeys and that specifically, and the Tremor specifically, but this really is opening up a lot of different options, especially looking over at my Xbox adaptive controller here and saying, well, what could I get through that joystick port now?
Right.
You know, that was just impossible before, or just too difficult.
Correct.
Plugging a mouse into it and having it act like an interface between the mouse and the adaptive controller, because it's used so much by so many people gaming.
Right.
So
yeah, and one of the interesting things you could do with this, and Microsoft would hate you if you did this, but I can't imagine how they could stop you. You could totally make the XAC take in keyboard and mouse, standard keyboard and mouse mappings for gaming.
Right.
And I don't know how on earth they would stop you.
Right.
And we have, and Dan is my primary co-conspirator on this. So Dan and I beat the hell out of CircuitPython to make it support that XAC input, which is a completely non-standard joystick port.
Right.
But we absolutely know how to do that, right, Dan?
Yeah, now you can do custom HID devices in CircuitPython. So
and on this board with the filter, it's still in Arduino, but we know the screwy descriptor that we need. We know it can't be a composite. It can't have multiple report IDs. It has to be a gamepad, and it has to have exactly one joystick and 8 buttons. That's what it has to have. And we know exactly how to make it. We've got it. He's got it in a file in CircuitPython. We can just port it over to Arduino and expose it through Tiny USB, right?
Right. Tiny USB has all the hooks we need to do that.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right, Ron. I think that one of the next steps would be let's use this as an XAC input.
Right? I don't know what exactly, but something.
Why not an IntelliKeys?
Yeah, that's true.
I've done that for in fact, that's what this one is. So this actually says on the bottom, it says Xbox control, because this is not programmed as a keyboard and mouse. This one's actually programmed in CircuitPython to be an Xbox control, right?
Okay.
But to do it,
I think I've seen that code. Yeah.
And so in this one, We'd have to do it in Arduino, but that doesn't kill anybody. Yeah, and so David says IntelliKeys to joystick, right? Let's see. So David's got comments on here. It says custom solution would permit the use to tune the formula because maybe one size does not fit all, right? I think that the WebHID, I think everybody should look at WebHID. It works on Chrome, and it gives us the ability to put a web interface on any custom device we have. And the fact that that worked freaked me out a little bit because it just worked, right? David says Trinket M0 is in stock. It is possible to automate the flashing of a board, even with it from another Feather USB host. That's what Lamar is doing. That is true. I've glued together various pieces of code to make an absolute mouse in Circuit Python. An absolute mouse. So I understand what you mean.
How do you handle the screen resolution on an absolute mouse?
It's probably just fixed to the size of a piece of paper or something. He
Okay.
maps it to whatever he wants it to get to.
Yeah, I mean, I that's one of the problems I was looking at is using a little joystick as a mouse for an absolute mouse.
And it says IntelliKeys and joystick. Okay, so I think that's the comments. I think the conversation's gone well here on the chat. I don't see anything else coming up. Guys, I really appreciate you you joining me, and this was actually pretty productive. I didn't go through my timeline, and I don't really want to. I did make I will show it for a second, just to for a second here. So I made nope. There, nope. Okay. I'm just failing miserably here. All right. So I made a timeline which is my experience with IntelliKeys. It started when I started dating my wife in 1996 in her classroom. The coolest toy in her classroom was an IntelliKeys. And I kind of went through all the crap we had to do to get to the point where
I just love that I'm on the timeline.
Yeah, she made it. It's right here. It says
pressing the heck out of you.
Yeah, it says Alyssa pressures and Bill offers. So Alyssa said, you have to open source this. You have to open source this. And I said, if you open source it, we will host it and take it over. And that's when they said yes.
And that's what happened. They said, here, have everything.
Yep. And I'll tell you, Dan, if there was one thing that I wish is in one Adafruit video somewhere, it is to say that this wouldn't be possible unless AbleNet had open sourced those drivers. Because I don't care about giving any credit to AbleNet. They don't deserve it. But it helps me to convince the next people I ask that yes, this can actually happen. It's good to know to hear from the end person that it wouldn't happen if they hadn't open sourced it. And I think that's
an inevitability in the world of AT that something else is going to be acquired or seem to not be worth the time
weekly.
Right.
Weekly.
So you know, it's part of the reason I do like to make it sure it's like, yes, we pressured AbleNet, but they could have said no.
They could have said no. Right.
They could have said, nope, we're just keeping it. And the fact that they were willing to open source it makes all of these kind of, you know, push forward results possible. So,
yep.
And the other thing that I've done with some organizations too, that they've required us to put code in escrow. So they don't get the code unless we go under. And then
absolutely. And that's
the third party hands over the code.
Right. In our how to be an AT friend, a maker friendly AT company, it says things like, by all means, keep your patents and do whatever else you want. But if you're shutting down, release the patents, open source your code. Because like the scatter switch is the poster child for this, right? There's a thing called a scatter switch. It's the little eye switch that I made for Ella that watches for when she winks her face. So that thing was a commercial product called a scatter switch. It was absurdly expensive. It was like $400 for an infrared sensor. No shit, right? But it was patented by Michigan State University. Bought by, give me the name of that company that bought everything.
Well, Tash owned it, and then it went to AbleNet.
Right, then it went to AbleNet, which is where everything goes to die. But it wasn't all AbleNet's fault in this case because Michigan State still owned the patent. They couldn't open source it. They couldn't release everything because they owned the patent. So until the patent expired, we couldn't do that. So, and I don't think it's expired. The one I made for Ella is probably in some breach of patent, but I don't care. I didn't say that, but I made it for Ella. I'm not making a commercial product. I made one thing for a little girl who can't move. So screw them. So let's finish it there. I think that's upbeat enough. But Dan, if you gently, kindly ask for that, that would be wonderful. Just to somewhere say that was open source.
Well, I suggest you could submit a pull request to the README in tax IntelliKeys.
Yeah.
I think that's better than in some random video. It's gonna be,
okay. Yeah, I'll do that. I already have a fork for it. I'll suggest that to him as well. Yeah. So, all right, James, thank you for your help.
You're welcome. Talk to you later.
And I'll be in touch with you. Everybody else, thank you for joining us on this afternoon, and everybody who joined us in the comments. Good luck and have fun. Bye, everybody.